Hi, welcome back guys. This is your friend, the fanfiction guy. Back with another fanfiction. This is the first part of What If Deku Awakens Bird Quirk. Now before starting, please give this video a like and subscribe to the channel if you want more videos like this. Now let's get into the fanfic. Izuku woke up early on a Sunday morning, bursting into his parents' room with excitement. "Mom! Dad!" he shouted, jumping onto their bed, startling them both awake. His mother, a green-haired woman with a round face, groggily asked, "What? Izuku? What are you doing at 5:35 a.m. on a Sunday?" "It's my birthday. Let's go see my quirk." "Come on, Mom, let's go," he urged, trying to pull her out of bed. With a sigh, his mother replied, "Izuku, it's not even 6. So? Not many people will be there, and we can be really fast. Then you can sleep more, and I can practice being a hero," he said, trying to convince her. "All right, go eat breakfast and then we can go," she chuckled. "Yes," he exclaimed, racing to the kitchen for his breakfast. After breakfast, they arrived at the waiting room of the hospital. When their names were called, they followed a short doctor with a bushy mustache and circular glasses down a long corridor to his office. They sat in chairs as he closed the door and took a seat across from them. "Hello, little man. I'm Dr. Maryuta Shiga. I'm guessing you're here to find out what your quirk is?" he asked. Izuku nodded eagerly. "All right then, I just have a few tests to do." "They won't take long," the doctor assured him. Once the tests were completed, the doctor looked at them seriously. "I have the results, but there is some bad news and some good news. What would you like to hear first, Mrs. Yagi?" The bad news, please," she replied hesitantly. "Well, your son has a dormant quirk, meaning that he has a trigger that needs to be activated. There is a possibility that he may never find that trigger, which would mean he is practically quirkless for life," he explained, causing Izuku to drop his all-might toy in shock. "And the good news?" his mother asked, looking at the doctor with hope. "While we can't determine what his quirk will be, we can tell you that it will be powerful if he manages to awaken it," he said with a smile. Izuku felt a surge of excitement and hope as he looked up at his mother, who returned a strange smile. "Thank you, doctor. We will be going now," she said, taking Izuku's hand. "Okay then, little man, come back and show me if you get your quirk," the doctor called as they left. "Bye." Izuku waved as they walked out of the hospital and into the car. "Did you hear that, Mom? If I can wake up my quirk, it'll be powerful," he exclaimed. His mother looked down at him with a strange glare. "Would you be quiet?" she snapped, startling him. "All I heard from that doctor is that you're practically quirkless. I can't believe it. What am I meant to do with a useless, quirkless son? Why me?" Izuku fell silent, tears streaming down his face as he processed her harsh words. He had never heard her speak to him like that before. When they got home, she practically threw him out of the car. As they entered the living room, Izuku saw a tall, skinny man with blonde hair. "Hey honey, son, how about you come over here and tell me about your quirk?" his father said. Izuku smiled and walked over to sit on his dad's lap, but his mother interrupted. "Don't bother. He's as good as quirkless unless he does something to awaken it." "So useless," she stated coldly. His father quickly pushed Izuku off his lap, looking at him with disgust before stomping off into the kitchen. He returned with his wallet, grabbed his wife's hand, and walked out the door, leaving Izuku behind. Watching from the window, Izuku hoped they would come back, but they didn't. He broke down in tears, crying until he passed out from exhaustion. Later, he woke up to the sound of the door. He ran to find his parents with flushed faces and glass bottles in their hands. When they saw him, they scowled and approached him. They pushed him to the ground and began hitting him with their bottles, kicking him without regard for his cries to stop. Eventually, they passed out, leaving him to limp back to his room and cry himself to sleep. What had happened? Izuku woke up at 7:30 to the sound of his all-might alarm clock blaring. His mother's voice echoed from the living room, where she had fallen asleep the night before, urging him to get ready for school. He silenced the clock and attempted to get out of bed, but pain shot through him from the previous night's events. After a struggle, he managed to stand, get dressed, and make his way downstairs. As he reached the kitchen, his mother pulled him away from the cupboard, tossing him a piece of bread and his All Might-themed backpack before shoving him out the door to walk to school alone. When he finally arrived at school, he saw the teachers ushering everyone inside. He hurried to catch up with his best friend, Bakugo, whom he affectionately called Kaken. "Kaken, I'm here," Izuku called out as Bakugo turned to look at him. "About time, Deku. So, what quirk did you get?" "Bet it's not as cool as mine," Bakugo replied, setting off small explosions in his hands. Izuku admired Kaken's power, wishing he had a quirk as impressive. "Well, Kaken, the thing is," Izuku began. "Oh Deku, don't tell me you're quirkless. That would make you even more useless," Bakugo interrupted, laughing. "No, I'm not quirkless. I have what's called a dormant quirk, but I don't know what I need to do to activate it," Izuku stammered. "That's the same thing as being quirkless. You're so worthless, I can't believe I was ever your friend. From now on, we aren't friends. Get away from me, quirkless scum," Bakugo declared, pushing Izuku down with an explosion before running off to join his other friends. Izuku watched from the ground as they laughed and pointed at him, tears streaming down his face. He hated this. This became Izuku's daily routine, waking up, having bread for breakfast, walking to school, enduring Bakugo's bullying, limping home, facing his parents, crying himself to sleep, and repeating the cycle. His parents and Bakugo always found new ways to hurt him, and he wouldn't be surprised if they were looking up new methods online. Now in his third year of middle school, the end of the year was approaching, and he looked forward to a break from Bakugo. His thoughts were interrupted by a loud voice. "Please, don't lump me in with these extras," Bakugo shouted, and Izuku rolled his eyes at his friend's ego. "Ah, right, going to you, right Bakugo?" the teacher asked, and the room erupted in whispers. "No way. They have like a 2% acceptance rate," someone exclaimed. "Go Bakugo," another cheered. "That's right. And I've already aced the mock exam," Bakugo yelled, and Izuku felt the teacher's gaze shift to him. "Going for UA too, right Yagi?" the teacher asked, and all eyes turned to Izuku. Laughter erupted around him, and he felt the sting of humiliation as Bakugo's explosion went off right in front of him. "Like Deku could ever be a hero," someone shouted. "Yeah, he's just a useless nobody," another added. Now, students, sit down," the teacher said, trying to regain control of the classroom. As the school day ended, Izuku packed up his notebooks. Bakugo approached him, placing a hand on his shoulder while grabbing his book and exploding it. With a threatening smile, he began to burn through Izuku's jacket. "Deku, if you know what's good for you, you'll withdraw your UA application, got it?" Bakugo warned, exploding his hand on Izuku's shoulder and launching him into the wall. He tossed Izuku's book out the window before stopping in the doorway. "Do us all a favor and take a swan dive off the roof. Maybe you'll get a quirk in your next life," he laughed before leaving. As Izuku walked home, he was lost in thought, wondering if there was anyone who cared about him. He was too deep in contemplation to notice the giant sludge villain lurking behind him. "A medium-sized meat shield, perfect," the villain said as it pounced on him. Izuku struggled to breathe, panic setting in as he began to cry and say a prayer. Just as he was about to pass out, he heard a voice call out, "Texas!" That was the last thing he remembered before waking up, who knows how long later, to someone slapping him in the face. As he sat up, ready to thank his savior and ask them to stop, he was met with the sight of the most amazing person he had ever seen, All Might. Here I was, face to face with All Might, the #1 hero, my idol. It had been 10 seconds of a one-sided staring competition before I managed to come to my senses and stutter out, "All Might? Will you sign my..." I grabbed my notebook, only to see that he had already signed it. What?" I yelled as I looked up at him. "Yes, my boy, now I must go," he said, preparing to leave. I had something I needed to know, so before he could get away, I latched onto his leg. "Way it!" I yelled, but it was too late. He had already jumped, and I was still hanging onto his leg. "Young man, you must let go," he said. Was he joking? "If I let go, I'll die," I stuttered. "Oh, well, just hang on as I land," he replied. "I guess not. Maybe just slow?" Once we landed, I let go of his leg and stood there, panting and recovering as he looked at me. "All might I have a question," I said. "What is it, my boy?" he asked. "Well, I was wondering if you think a person with a dormant quirk factor can become a hero?" I asked. "A dormant quirk factor? They're the ones who have some sort of lock that needs to be broken before being able to be used, right?" he said. I nodded. "Well, if the person can use the quirk and it would suit the job, then sure. But if they can't, then I'm sorry, my boy, but think realistically, they would just be a liability and get in the way of all the other heroes doing their jobs. Not to mention that they could put themselves at risk, meaning that the others have even more to worry about. What about a police officer? They're not as flashy and don't get as much credit, but it's still a respectable job." I stood there shocked. My whole world just shattered. But before I could even process what he had said, he added, "I'm sorry, young man, but I must be going now." And with that he left. My legs soon gave out beneath me and I fell to my knees. Only then did I register what had just happened. It wasn't long before salty tears flowed down my face to the point where I couldn't even see properly. He's right. Kaken's right. My parents are right too. They're all right. I am just a useless, worthless, quirkless Deku, I sobbed while standing up. I walked over to the rail of the building and looked down. The ground had never looked so soft and comforting. It was then that I remembered what Kaken had said to me earlier. "Do us all a favor and take a swan dive off the roof. Maybe you'll get a quirk in your next life." "Haha, a quirk? That sounds nice," I said with a smile, but that smile soon turned into a frown as I realized that what he was saying was true. I really would be doing them all a favor. I smiled again as I realized that maybe, just maybe, I could make them happy with me gone. Their lives ought to be better. I was too far broken anyway, there was no way to save me now. I turned around, taking off my backpack and shoes, then wrote a note to leave with my things. I walked back over to the rail and climbed on the outside, smiling down at the ground as tears continued to stream down my face. One. Stop. Izuku. And with that, I let go. Falling. Waiting for the cold embrace of death. But, I screamed as I hit the ground. I jumped face first, but it was my back that hurt. And why could I still think? I didn't survive, did I? No. I was on my daily patrol after school, sighing to myself, wondering why I couldn't just sleep. Nothing had happened, so I found a roof and just sat on top, waiting. I looked around and saw a familiar-looking boy on the roof of a building close to mine. He was smiling, so I thought nothing of it. After 5 minutes, I looked back at the boy. Now I saw him taking off his shoes, bag, and a note? He then walked back over to the rail. By now, I was worried, but then I saw him climb over to the outside of the rails. Knowing for sure what he was planning to do, I began running over. I heard him counting down. I wasn't going to make it before he reached one, so when I heard him getting really close, I yelled, "Stop!" But I was too late. He fell. That was Izuku. That's why he looked so familiar, he was my nephew. Before I could do anything else, I was already screaming out his name. "Izuku!" I yelled, looking away, knowing I was too late. That was when I heard it, a blood-curdling scream. I looked down, expecting to see something I did not want to, but instead, I saw a very confused-looking Izuku with wings, a feathery tail, and patches of smaller feathers all over his body. What was this? Wasn't he meant to be quirkless? I started going down to him as fast as I could, hearing him muttering to himself about how he couldn't have survived, still with his eyes closed. No. I heard him yell as he finally opened his eyes to see his wings. No, his quirk. In a world where the skies were filled with vibrant colors and the air buzzed with magic, there lived a young being with extraordinary abilities. His wings were not just for flight, they were a canvas of emotions and power. When he chose to, he could transform his soft, fluffy feathers into sharp, spiky ones, resembling the talons of a hawk. This transformation was not without its costs, as once he plucked the feathers, they would take time to regrow. However, during this state, the feathers became unbreakable, a testament to his strength. One of his most unique traits was his emotional feathers. The ends of his ear feathers changed color based on his feelings, providing a visual representation of his inner state. When he was angry, annoyed, or mad, his feathers would turn a fiery red. If he felt confused or hungry, they would shift to an orange hue. A calm yellow indicated he was fine or normal, while a sickly green showed disgust or illness. When sadness or boredom struck, his feathers would take on a blue tint, and a vibrant purple would emerge when he was excited or hyped. If embarrassment washed over him, his feathers would blush a soft pink. Despite the challenges he faced, he embraced his abilities, knowing they were part of who he was. He often pondered what other powers he might possess, eager to explore the depths of his potential. As he soared through the skies, he felt the wind beneath his wings, a reminder of his freedom and the adventures that awaited him. Each day was a new opportunity to discover more about himself and the world around him. With a heart full of hope and a spirit ready for exploration, he embraced the journey ahead, knowing that every experience would shape him into the being he was destined to become. Izuku opened his eyes, expecting to see a gruesome sight after jumping but strangely not dying. Instead, he found himself looking down from a bird's-eye view of the street where he was supposed to meet his end. Panic set in as he thought someone might have stopped him with their quirk, forcing him to return. However, as he attempted to move, a strange and painful sensation coursed through his back. Turning his head to investigate the source of the pain, he was shocked to see a pair of large greenish turquoise wings and a beautiful, long feathery tail. Suddenly, he felt something wrap around his waist and legs, pulling him upward at an incredible speed. To his astonishment, he noticed that his arms and legs were adorned with feathers as well. Once he reached the roof, the cloth that had enveloped him unwrapped, and he sensed someone running toward him. Before he could react, he was pulled into a tight hug, and tears began to flow down his cheeks. "Izuku." "Why?" the familiar voice asked. Izuku recognized the voice but hadn't seen its owner since he was 4 years old. "You Uncle Shota?" he stammered, turning to face the pro-hero Eraserhead, who was now in tears. "I'm sorry I confused you for..." He was interrupted as he was pulled back into another tight embrace. No, you're right. I've got you. You're safe. You scared the life out of me, problem child." Izuku looked down at the ground, feeling defeated. "I'm sorry. I can't do anything right. Not even die." "Hey, no. I don't know who made you think that or why, but I do know that you are special and you matter so much, okay?" Looking up at him, Izuku felt the tears flow more freely. It was the first time someone had said something so affirming to him in ages. Thank you so much," he whispered. "All right. Now we are going to my house and we are going to talk for a bit." "Okay." At Aizawa's house, they walked up the steps to a large home that Izuku vaguely remembered from his childhood. Uncle Shota opened the door for him, and they entered. They settled on the couches, and he handed Izuku a hot drink. After a moment of silence, Aizawa broke the stillness. "So, could you tell me why you tried to die?" Izuku finished for him. "Yes." He looked down, a small broken laugh escaping his lips. "Well, He lifted his arm, admiring the feathers and their beautiful colors, recalling that he now had a quirk. "Sorry, I was quirkless. Well, I had a dormant quirk factor." "What's that?" "It's where you have to do something to unlock your quirk, but you don't know what it is. So I'm guessing that either death or falling from a high place was my trigger." "Yay. That was the trigger?" Aizawa exclaimed. "Apparently. And as you can guess, there wasn't really a point anymore. Being quirkless, no one at school really liked me. Even the teachers found my situation amusing. Heck, my main bully is my best childhood friend." "Oh, no, problem child, why didn't you tell anyone? Like me or your parents?" "I haven't seen you since I was 4 and my parents." "What about your parents?" "They are abusive." "Oh no. I need to get home. They're going to hurt me, literally. Please don't tell anyone, especially my parents, what happened." "Okay, uncle." Suddenly, a hand grabbed his arm and he flinched, expecting to be hit. But when the blow didn't come, He turned to see a furious Uncle Shota. "You're going to be staying here for a bit while I have a chat with your parents, okay?" "Okay." As Aizawa approached Izuku's house, he felt a surge of anger at how the boy had been treated. How could anyone be so cruel to a child over something he couldn't control? He knocked on the door multiple times without receiving a response. Finally, he spotted a pair of eyes peering through the blinds. "Please go away. We don't have any business with you," a voice said sweetly. Aizawa's rage boiled over. He stepped back about 10 meters, then charged at the door, determined to break it down. "Open up," he shouted. As Aizawa burst through the door in a fit of rage, he heard quick footsteps approaching. 2 figures appeared in the doorway, their eyes darting between him and the shattered door he stood on. "Aizawa! What the—" They couldn't finish their sentence before he marched over to them, delivering a sharp slap to Inko and a swift kick to Toshinori. Ack! Toshinori fell to the floor, where he belonged. "Hey! I don't know what makes you think that just because you're his brother-in-law, you can march into our house and assault us, but you better get that out of your head right now before I call the police." Inko yelled. "1. I am the police." Aizawa displayed his hero license. 2. "Where's your son?" he demanded, his voice rising. "Why would we know where that little— I mean, we don't know, and we've been so worried. Do you know?" Inko stammered. Aizawa narrowed his eyes. "Don't even try. I know what's been going on here." He watched as some color drained from their faces. "Wanna know how I know?" he asked. How?" they replied, fear evident in their voices. "Well, I was on my daily patrol of the city, but nothing was happening, so I sat on a rooftop keeping watch. That's when I saw a boy, maybe 13 or 14, on another rooftop a few buildings over. It raised my concern, but when I saw him smiling, I didn't pay much mind to it." Their faces turned pale. Did he?" Inko asked, her voice trembling. "Yes, he jumped." Inko began to cry, and Toshinori looked horrified. Aizawa thought maybe they cared about him, but then he continued. "Great. Why couldn't he have jumped somewhere else, not where a hero is? Now we're going to have to pay a fine or something." Aizawa was astounded, and before he knew it, Toshinori was back on the ground, holding himself. "Stop!" Inko screamed, kneeling beside her husband. Once Toshinori recovered enough, Aizawa continued. But, they asked in unison. "I saw him climb to the outside of the rail, and that's when I began to run over, trying to save him, but I wasn't going to get there in time. Only then did I recognize him. As he was about to hit the ground, I looked away, not wanting to see that. Instead, I heard a pained scream, which isn't normal, so I looked down, and to my surprise, he had a pair of turquoise wings, a feathery tail, and feathers covering some of his limbs and ears. He was flying. I took that chance to grab him with my capture weapon and pull him up to the roof. From there, we went to my house, where he told me everything." Their mouths dropped open in shock. "His trigger. That's what it was? He has a quirk." Inko said, dazed. "Where is our son? We demand to see him and have him back here. We are his parents." Toshinori yelled, pointing at Aizawa. "Not anymore." Aizawa replied, clicking a pair of quirk-canceling cuffs onto their wrists. "You are under arrest for child abuse, neglect of your child, and being grade-A jackasses." They began to struggle against the cuffs. "If I were you, I wouldn't even try. Look outside." Aizawa pointed behind him to the police cars. "They arrived while we were talking." He smirked as he walked behind them, pushing them outside. Officers came to lead them to the cars, closing them in the back while others spoke to Aizawa about their punishment. "Here you go, Eraserhead, sir," a young officer said, approaching him with some special papers. "Thank you," Aizawa replied, taking the papers. He walked up to the car and pressed the papers against the window for Toshinori to read. "No. He's our child. You can't do this. We will have him back." Toshinori screamed. Aizawa smirked wider. "Ha! You think so?" He then walked away, heading home to Izuku. When he arrived, he found Izuku asleep on the couch. Deciding to let him rest, Aizawa gently placed a blanket over him and left, planning to talk to him in the morning. After Uncle Shota left to confront my parents, I felt a bit lost. Then I remembered my new quirk and the wings I had. It was so exciting to think that I could fly. I stepped into the backyard, planning to find a low tree branch to practice my flying. As I walked, I accidentally bumped into someone, and we both took a few steps back. "Oh, I'm sorry. Wait, who are you?" I looked up to see my uncle Hizashi. Well, I guess this is his house, so why wouldn't he be here? "Oh, hello, Uncle Hizashi. It's me, Izuku," I said with a smile, watching his face shift from confusion to surprise. "Oh, Izuku, it's been a while. Sorry for not visiting. But, what happened? Your parents told us you were quirkless." "Nice wings and tail, by the way," he said. I smiled even wider. "Thank you, Uncle." But then my expression turned sad. "But if you want to know what happened, you'll have to ask Uncle Shota because I can't say. He's also why I'm here." He looked confused again. "Okay, I'll ask him when he gets back from wherever he is. Well, I've got some chores to do. See ya." He started to walk away. I thought to myself, I swear this man, where does he go in the middle of the day when there are no villain alerts and he has no patrol? What the heck, Shota? I chuckled at his comment and continued searching for the perfect spot to test my wings. Once I found a grassy patch clear of trees, I opened my wings and admired them. The only time I had seen them was when wow. They were beautiful with various shades of turquoise and hints of red. I tried to see my tail, but it was difficult with my wings in the way. From what I could see, it matched the colors of my wings. Maybe I can find a reflective window to look into. Wait. Can I still see glass? Whatever, I would check that out later. I refocused on my mission, to fly or at least hover. I had seen hawks fly, and they didn't seem to flap their wings often, but their wings were bigger and featherier? Was that the right word? I wasn't sure. My wings were smaller in proportion to my body and appeared more compact, neat, and aerodynamic. Maybe they were designed for speed and agility, allowing me to maneuver in tighter spaces. "All right, I'm gonna try. Now." I shouted as I flapped my wings, but I didn't go anywhere. Oh. I practiced like this for an hour, and by the end I could get about 30 centimeters off the ground and hover for around 10 to 15 seconds. That was the most I could do before I felt completely exhausted. I walked back inside to rest on the couch, checking if I could see glass on the way. I could only see it when I was very close. I needed to be careful about that. Once I settled on the couch, I began analyzing my quirk in my head. Since I could hover, I guessed my traits were similar to those of a hummingbird. I had the same general wing shape, but I would need to do some research. I wonder if they have a device I could use, I thought, feeling a wave of tiredness wash over me. Suddenly, I felt really tired and hungry, but not for something like a sandwich, something sweet like strawberries. It probably had to do with the hummingbird aspect of my quirk, since they like sweet nectar. It made sense, but it would also be a bit of a hassle. "Gosh, I really am feeling tired," I yawned. "Maybe I'll just have a little nap." I lay down on the couch and drifted off to sleep. It had officially been a month since Izuku was adopted by Shota and Hizashi, and he couldn't be happier. He was incredibly grateful to them. Tears filled his eyes when they gifted him a wardrobe full of new clothes, as most of his current ones were torn, too small, and some even stained from neglect. Now being homeschooled, Izuku planned to take the entrance exams for UA in 10 months. Since discovering his quirk, he practiced every day, eager to explore its potential. The first thing he mastered was flying properly. He had accidentally discovered his ability called hypnosis on a hot day when he wasn't wearing a shirt, revealing a vibrant patch of feathers at the base of his neck. Shota had come to tell him it was lunchtime, and while hovering, Izuku inadvertently created a humming sound with his wings. To his surprise, Shota complied with whatever he asked. Izuku and Hizashi took advantage of this amusing situation, resulting in some rather embarrassing photos. However, after a while, Izuku began to experience a severe headache, forcing him to stop. He concluded that to use his hypnosis, the person needed to look at the colorful feathers and listen to the humming of his wings, and the headache was a drawback if he overused it. He discovered another aspect of his quirk, feather spikes, when Hizashi startled him while he was sleeping. The fright triggered Izuku to harden his feathers, nearly causing Hisashi to get hurt. Despite the scare, they celebrated this new discovery together. Initially, Izuku wanted to name this ability Shredding Blade Feathers of Death, but Shota convinced him to choose something less dramatic. The latest ability he uncovered was called Hover. By flapping his wings, he could create anything from a gentle breeze to a powerful tornado. He was currently trying to create a small whirlwind to help gather leaves, thinking it would be a fun way to train while doing chores. However, he struggled to make it work until a thought struck him. Shota, he gasped and immediately ran off to find his dad. Izuku had just come up with an amazing idea. He dashed through the halls, calling out for his dad. "Dad, where are you?" "I'm behind the TV," came the reply. Curious, Izuku rushed to the television and found Shota crammed into a tight space in his sleeping bag, resembling sardines stuffed into a can. It was a funny sight, and the first thing Izuku did was snap a picture to send to Hisashi. Then he pulled his dad out of the cramped spot. "Dad, you know how I really want to go to UA in the hero course, specifically your class?" Izuku asked eagerly. "Yes," Shota replied. "Well, I was wondering if you could train me for the last 10 months before the exam. I'm not making much progress on my own, and I keep discovering new things I can do. If one of them gets out of control, you could cancel my quirk to stop it. Also, do you think we could visit the quirk doctor? I promised him when I was 4 that I would come back once I had my quirk. He could probably help me figure out what else I can do. First off, I would be happy to train you, but you must know that it will be as hard as going through hell and back. Do you agree to not give up and put your all into your training?" Shota asked. Izuku eagerly nodded, unaware of the challenges ahead. "Good, don't let me down. Now, I'm free, so get in the car, and let's go pay a visit to this quirk doctor," Shota said with a smile. "Yes." Izuku cheered. At the quirk doctor's office, they waited for their name to be called. Although Izuku hadn't changed his name yet, they planned to use Shota's last name for the appointment. "Aizawa?" called a short, round man from behind the desk. They stood up and walked into his office, taking their seats. The doctor squinted at Izuku, studying him closely. "Do I know you?" he asked. "Do you remember a boy 10 years ago with a dormant quirk that, if activated, would be powerful? You asked him to come back and show you his quirk when he got it." Izuku replied. The doctor's eyes widened as he recalled the memory. "Yes. Congratulations. How did you get it?" "I'm sorry, but that's a bit of a sore topic for him." Shota interjected. "Oh, my apologies," the doctor said, looking regretful. They explained that they wanted to know everything about Izuku's quirk, and the doctor nodded, indicating he would conduct some simple tests. Once he finished, he handed Izuku a sheet of paper detailing his quirk and congratulated him once again before they left. Izuku felt pleased with what the paper revealed. Quirk explanation. Name: Humming Wings. Drawback: must consume sugar or sweet foods like a hummingbird needs nectar. Abilities: Hypnosis. Can hypnotize people by showing a patch of brightly colored feathers on his neck or flashing his tail while they listen to the humming sound his wings make. Drawback: the humming sound can cause headaches if overused. Flight. Can fly at speeds rivaling hawks due to the feathers covering much of his body, enhancing his aerodynamics. He was very agile while flying because his wings weren't excessively large. His quirk made him lighter, so they didn't need to be huge. He could even fly backward. One of his abilities was a super sense. Like hawks, he could sense things with his feathers, but since his whole body was covered in them, no one could get past him. There were no drawbacks to this ability. Another ability was hovering. He could hover in place while flapping his wings, creating varying amounts of wind depending on how much he wanted. He could generate very strong winds, but this ability could take a lot of energy. He also had feather spikes. He could transform his wings from soft and fluffy to spiky, dagger-like feathers, similar to hawks. However, once he plucked them out, they had to grow back, which took time. During this state, the feathers were unbreakable, but the drawback was the time it took for the feathers to regrow. Additionally, he had a unique feature called emotion feathers. The ends of his ear feathers changed color according to his feelings. Red indicated anger, orange meant confusion or hunger, yellow signified being fine or normal, green represented sickness or disgust, blue indicated sadness or boredom, purple showed excitement, and pink meant embarrassment. There were no drawbacks to this ability. From the Quirk Doctor's point of view, it was a powerful quirk, just what the Hero Commission had been looking for ever since Hawks had turned out so well. He decided to call them. The phone rang and someone answered, "Hello." "Yes, hello, this is the Quirk Doctor. I have found a quirk that is just what you are looking for," he said. "What is it?" the voice on the other end asked. "It's a very powerful bird quirk. I believe he will become faster and more agile than Hawks if you train him as you did Hawks. He came here with Pro Hero Eraserhead, and I overheard them talking about how he is going to attend UA Hero School," he replied. "Name?" the voice inquired. "Izuku Yagi. I'll send you his file," the doctor said. He sent the file, and after it was received, the voice continued. "Interesting. If he is that powerful and what you said about UA is true, then we should see him at the sports festival. Depending on how he performs there, we will decide what to do. Thank you for this information." With that, the call ended. Rude, the doctor muttered to himself. Over the course of 10 months, Aizawa had been training Izuku, and the young hero was improving rapidly thanks to the rigorous training regimen. In the first month, their focus was on Izuku's speed and flight. They practiced for hours, with Izuku attempting to dodge Aizawa's capture weapon while flying. At the end of each training day, Aizawa would use a stopwatch to time how long Izuku could hover off the ground. They also provided him with goggles to help him fly higher and faster without the wind affecting his vision. As Izuku became more adept, they added weight to his wrists and ankles to increase the challenge. They set up an obstacle course where Izuku could utilize the agility his wings provided, and although he crashed a few times, by the end of the month, he could fly through the course with relative ease, though not at his top speed. In the second month, they concentrated on his hover ability. They set up towers of empty soda cans, and Izuku had to knock them over using gusts of wind. As the cans became easier to topple, they replaced them with heavier objects, like full soda cans and eventually bricks. The increased weight required Izuku to generate stronger winds. One day, while using old scrap cars found on Dagobah Municipal Beach, he created a small tornado strong enough to blow both the cars and himself away. Aizawa then challenged Izuku to fly through the tornado without faltering his flight pattern by the end of the third month. Initially, Izuku could only create a small gust of wind, but by the end of the second month, he had nearly full control over small winds, though larger ones like tornadoes were still a challenge. The third and fourth months were dedicated to hand-to-hand combat. They woke up early and trained late, engaging in sparring sessions and lessons. Aizawa chose to focus on combat skills to ensure that Izuku could defend himself even if his quirk became ineffective. By the end of the third month, Izuku was still practicing flying through a small tornado, and by the middle of the fourth month, he managed to do so with only slight disruptions to his flight pattern. Aizawa was pleased with this progress, especially considering it was only Izuku's fourth month of flying. By the end of the fourth month, Izuku could last around 5 minutes in a sparring match against Aizawa, which was impressive for someone his age. In the fifth month, they split their training between feather spikes and hypnosis. The first half of the month focused on feather spikes. Each day, Izuku would fly at his current fastest speed while hardening his wings to slice through various materials, starting with soda cans and progressing to bricks and different metals. He often unintentionally slowed down while cutting due to the drag on his wings. During the hypnosis portion of the month, he practiced strengthening his grip on someone's mind and increasing his resistance to the sound that would give him a headache. By the end of the month, he could control someone for about 7 minutes before experiencing discomfort. For the next 5 months, Izuku was tasked with cleaning up Dagobah Municipal Beach, the site where they had found the broken-down cars. The beach had been littered with trash for so long that only the older residents remembered it as a nice place. Accepting the challenge, Izuku utilized all his training to clean the beach, as Aizawa had requested. He would slice larger items like cars into manageable pieces, tie them to himself, and fly them to the dump. He created small tornadoes to gather multiple pieces of trash and guide them to the dump. When his wings grew sore from flying, he would carry items, which also helped him build strength. By the end of these 10 months, Izuku had transformed into a confident and strong individual, shedding his former fears and insecurities. On the morning of the UA entrance exams, Aizawa woke up around 6:30 a.m. to prepare for the day. As he headed to Izuku's room to wake him, he heard a loud roar. Rushing to the roof, he scanned for trouble but instead spotted Izuku at the beach, standing on a pile of trash. Aizawa ran over, curious about what was happening, and was amazed to see a beautifully clean beach. "Wow," he exclaimed, taken aback. He looked up at Izuku, who stood with his wings and tail fully extended, shining in the morning sun. As Izuku began to sway and looked exhausted, Aizawa rushed to catch him before he fell. Once he set Izuku down, he scanned the beach from one end to the other, confirming that Izuku had indeed cleaned it all. It was remarkable, and Aizawa felt an unexpected sense of pride in the young hero. Izuku sighed and sat up, looking towards Aizawa. "Now, that was a challenge," he said with a small laugh. "I'm sure it was, and you did a great job." I'm very proud of you," Aizawa replied with a smile. Izuku's eyes began to tear up, and he hugged Aizawa tightly. "Yeah. Now we need to go to the entrance exams so you can show everyone what you can do." With that, Izuku pulled away and jumped up, filled with enthusiasm. "Yes. Let's go. Can't wait to see the reunion with Deku and Bakugo. I have also started a new book called From the Ashes I Rise, about Izuku as Hawk's and Dabi's son. He has a blue fire phoenix quirk that is very powerful because I didn't know how powerful phoenixes were." Izuku had decided to walk to UA with his dad and papa today, ensuring there was plenty of space for the other examinees. By the time they arrived, a large crowd was already gathering at the gates. As Izuku admired the various people showcasing their unique quirks, he became distracted and failed to notice a raised section of the pathway. Just as he realized he was about to fall, he felt himself being caught. Expecting it to be his dad's capture weapon, he turned to find a round-faced brunette girl standing beside him, a sheepish smile on her face as she waved awkwardly. "I'm sorry I used my quirk on you. I just saw you falling and wanted to help," she apologized. "It's okay really. Thank you for stopping me from falling. May I ask what your quirk is, miss?" Izuku replied. Uraraka Ochako. "My quirk is zero gravity, which means I can float things by touching them with all 5 fingers. But if I float too much, I start to feel nauseous. I really like your wings. They are really cool. Are they your quirk, or can you do other things too? Also, can I know your name?" "Oh, my name is Izuku Aizawa. Yes, they are my quirk, but I can also do other things such as hypnotize, make my feathers extremely sharp and unbreakable to use as daggers, create and manipulate wind, and I also have super senses due to all the feathers covering my body." Izuku rolled up the sleeve of his jumper and one of the legs of his pants. He looked up to see her staring at him in awe. "Yes?" he asked, noticing her expression. "Oh, sorry. It's just that is really powerful. And so cool," she exclaimed. Thank you," he replied, feeling a bit shy. By now, his dad and Papa had already made their way inside to do their jobs. Papa was the host, and Dad was one of the supervising teachers. As the conversation dwindled, the atmosphere grew a bit awkward until Papa announced for everyone to come into the auditorium. Izuku made a mental note to thank him later, though he wasn't particularly fond of the attention. He took his seat and opened a water bottle provided to them, nearly spitting it out when someone sat next to him, none other than Katsuki Bakugo. As Bakugo entered the auditorium, he scanned the room for his seat. When he found it next to someone with wings and a feathery tail, he felt a strange familiarity but dismissed it, unwilling to engage in conversation. Upon noticing Bakugo, Izuku looked as if he might be sick, barely managing to cover his mouth in time, which irritated Bakugo. As more people filled the room, Izuku continued to avoid looking in Bakugo's direction, further aggravating him. Bakugo thought to himself that he was certainly not ugly and was likely the best-looking person in the room, so why would Izuku react that way? Lost in his thoughts, Bakugo barely registered when the teacher began explaining the exam. He reached over to tap Izuku's shoulder, intending to tell him to stop avoiding him, but as he approached, Izuku flinched and jumped up, extending his wings defensively. Rolling his eyes, Bakugo turned back to the front, and Izuku sat down again. Suddenly, the spotlight shifted to the teacher and then to a boy who seemed overly serious. "Excuse me, sir, but you have only explained 3 different robots when the sheet states there are 4. If this is a mistake, I am highly disappointed in a school with such a great reputation," he shouted, pointing at Bakugo and Izuku. "You two have been messing around, and if you are not going to take this seriously, then please leave." Bakugo was about to retort when Izuku interrupted. "Hey! If you had just kept your mouth shut, you would have known that President Mike was about to explain the 4th robot." "Thank you. And yes, that is correct," the teacher replied. "I am sorry. Please continue." "But that doesn't explain your behavior," the boy insisted. "And we are not messing around. I have a perfectly good reason for what I did, and that's none of your business." Izuku shot back. "And what might that be?" the boy asked, clearly intrigued. "You forgot already, Kaken?" Izuku replied, catching Bakugo off guard. Bakugo's eyes widened at the name. It couldn't be, he thought Izuku was Quirkless. But before he could ponder further, he saw Izuku preparing to take off. In a moment of instinct, Bakugo shouted, "Deku," as he reached for the bottom feathers of Izuku's wings. However, Izuku reacted quickly, making his feathers sharp, causing Bakugo to cut himself and pull back. Izuku glanced over his shoulder, hissing at Bakugo before soaring above the crowd. He approached President Mike, whispering something to him. Mike covered the microphone and whispered back, but Bakugo could have sworn he heard him say, "I understand, you go get some fresh air." Izuku nodded and flew out the doors. After leaving the auditorium, Izuku took a moment to gather his thoughts. He had to admit that Bakugo's actions had surprised him. He couldn't believe he had tried to grab his feathers like that. It would have hurt. Bakugo deserved that cut and more. Now, it was time for the practical exam, and thankfully, Izuku was not in the same group as Bakugo. As he scanned the crowd, he was pleased to see Uraraka practicing some breathing exercises. I began to walk over to her, only to be stopped by a classmate known for his stick-like demeanor. I asked him sarcastically, "Oh, to what do I owe the pleasure?" I smirked as I noticed his face twist into one of horror. "That is no way to talk to your future peers," he yelled, his voice echoing in the air. Did he always have to yell? And I believed. I was cut off mid-sentence as the gate opened for us to begin. I heard various comments from the crowd, such as, "He never said go," and "He's disqualified," along with accusations of cheating. I quickly began to destroy robots at an incredible speed, slicing them in half as I flew past. Then, in the distance, I heard a voice shout, "Go!" There is no countdown in heroing. By now, I had probably accumulated around 130 points, but I decided to let others score some points too, so I perched on the roof of a building, occasionally swooping down to save someone. Suddenly, the ground started to shake, and there it was, the 0-pointer. I stood up, preparing to fly away as instructed, but then I heard a scream. I looked around and spotted Uraraka trapped under heavy rubble, with the 0-pointer getting closer. From Aizawa's perspective, all the teachers were watching the practical exam from the supervising room. They were surprised when Izuku flew in right away, discussing how no one had done that before. After 5 minutes, the screen flicked to Izuku, who was sitting on a rooftop, relaxing and occasionally swooping down to save people. "What's he doing?" Endeavor asked. "Letting some other people get points too," I replied. The others looked at me with expressions of disbelief, muttering things like, "He really thinks he's that good," and "How full of himself." "Do you really think he needs to do that? Pull up his file. It'll explain why I know," I said. "Doing that now," Nizu replied. Once he pulled up my son's file, everyone gawked at the number of points he had accumulated. With the robot points and rescue points combined, he had around 345 points. Even I was a little surprised. "Wait, Izuku Aizawa, he's your son?" Nemuri asked. "Adopted, but yes, he is my son," I replied. "Okay then, let's see what he does against the 0-pointer, Nizu said as he pressed the button. As the 0-pointer was released, we saw the examinees running away. Izuku stood up, preparing to fly away, But then he stopped and looked around frantically, which worried me. The camera focused on a girl trapped under rubble, with the zero-pointer about to crush her. Power loader. Shut it off. I shouted. I can't, it won't respond, he replied. This was bad. We then saw Izuku dive down to the girl and hover above her. At that moment, I knew she would be safe. As he hovered, he created the largest tornado I had ever seen him generate. It blew the robot back, giving him time to lift the rubble and rescue the girl, then fly her to a roof and set her down safely. He then created another tornado and began to fly around with the current of the wind. I was confused, he hadn't shown me this before. But then we saw him shoot out toward the robot with incredible speed, his wings hardening as he sliced its head off. The bell for the end of the exam rang, and I looked around, noticing everyone's mouths hanging open in disbelief. That was insane, someone murmured. See, he told me he was powerful. Do we still have to wait until the festival? Can't he come now? I asked. No, but he is interesting, came the reply. Where is he? Ugh, and he's not replying to my texts either. Just then my phone chimed. About time, I exclaimed, pulling out my phone to check my messages. H, where are you? S, sorry, I had something I needed to do. H, it's okay, but what was it? S, well, it's about Izuku. Do you remember him? H, yeah. I saw him today. We talked, and I thought he was quirkless or something, but he has a super cool quirk. I've seen him practicing to fly out back. S, well, he was actually quirkless but had a dormant quirk. Do you know what that is? H, yeah. And he had one? S, yup, and he wasn't treated very well because he just discovered it today. H, oh no, what happened? Well, after explaining about his bullies, his parents, and how they were arrested, H responded with disbelief. That's terrible. How could my brother do something like that, especially to his own son? Yeah, and I was wondering. What? H asked. Since he doesn't have a family to live with anymore because they didn't love him at all, could he live with us? Maybe we could adopt him. I mean, his dad said he wished he could die where I wouldn't find him because they didn't want a fine. Die? What are you talking about? H questioned, confused. He got his quirk while trying to jump off a roof, and that was the only reason I could save him. That's why I know all this. And my brother said what? I'm this close to committing a felony, and I'm a hero, H said, frustration evident in his tone. Okay, so what do you say? First off, you're meant to try and stop me, and second, of course, he is ours now, and we will protect him from those people. Okay, cool. I'll get the papers, and we can ask him when I get back. All right. Bye. See you. I couldn't believe I was related to such a monster. But now, he had us. If he wanted. Time skipped to when Izuku is waking up. Izuku's point of view. I yawned and stretched as I sat up, letting my eyes adjust to the light of the room. As I looked around, I remembered everything that had happened the day before, about my quirk and my parents. Then I saw my two uncles sitting on the couch next to me, smiling at me. Good morning, Izuku. Morning, problem child, they greeted. Morning, uncles. I replied cheerfully. They exchanged glances. Is everything okay? Best worried. Yes, actually. We would like you to take a look at these papers and tell us what you think, Uncle Hizashi said, sliding some papers toward me. Okay. I replied eagerly. As I looked through them, my eyes began to water. Soon I was full on crying. They were adoption papers. As I finished reading them, I couldn't contain my excitement. Yes. I screamed, jumping up to hug them. My new dads. It had now been 1 week since the UA exams, and the letters still hadn't arrived. Izuku didn't want to sound cocky, but he was confident he had passed. He found both the written and practical exams easy, so there was no reason to doubt his success. Still, he longed for confirmation that his dream could come true. Another day passed before his letter finally came in the mail. As it arrived, his father rushed into the room, holding it excitedly. Aizu, your letter's here, he exclaimed, using his quirk a bit too enthusiastically. Izuku flinched, holding his ears and sending his father a quick glare. Oops, sorry, his father apologized. It's okay. Hey, Papa, could you find Dad so we can all see my results together? Izuku asked. Sure, but your letter is a bit different from others, so we need to be quick, he replied. Izuku nodded, and his father left to look for Dad. After about 5 minutes, both of them walked into the room, looking excited, though one was much more awake than the other. They sat on either side of Izuku on the couch and signaled for him to open the letter. Go on, Dad encouraged. With that, Izuku quickly ripped open the letter. A small disc fell to the floor, and a holographic screen projected from it. The screen displayed the word, connecting, with a loading sign underneath. After about 10 seconds, it beeped, and the screen changed to show a strange room. Then, from the corner of the screen, a white bear-like creature popped into view. It was Nizu. Hello, Izuku Aizawa. He began, as if waiting for a response. Say hi, kid. It's a video call, not a recording, Dad prompted. Hi. Izuku replied, sounding more like he was asking a question than greeting someone. Good. Ha. Now, congratulations. You passed the exam with flying colors, placing first and breaking all previous records except for All Might's, Nizu announced. He paused for effect. By the end of the practical exam, you had 295 villain points, but there was a secret part of the exam, rescue points. Because you saved Miss Uraraka Ochako from the zero-pointer and performed several smaller rescues while demonstrating an amazing amount of skill, you scored another 110 points, bringing your total to outstanding job. Nizu continued, and so I was wondering if you would consider being my personal student? Izuku hesitated. You would still participate in all the physical training with your class, but you would also do specialized training with me, Nizu explained. He looked to his dads, who nodded encouragingly. Sounds like fun. Izuku agreed. Great. Now, you have someone special who wants to talk with you, so that's it from me. See you next week at school, Nizu said, stepping out of view for another figure to enter the frame, All Might. Izuku's smile, along with his fathers, turned to a frown as All Might appeared on the screen. Hello, young Yagi. I would like to congratulate you on your first-place spot after the practical exam. All Might boomed. Izuku glared at him for the name mistake. I'm sorry, All Might, but I go by Izuku Aizawa now, not that. Anyway, Yagi. Izuku began to stand up, stretching his wings in an attempt to intimidate him and shouted at him not to call him that. But Aizawa placed a hand on his shoulder, giving him a look that said, just ignore it. So Izuku sat back down, still glaring at All Might. I saw your performance at the exam and have decided that you are the one worthy to inherit my power and to be the next symbol of peace. All Might declared, clapping his hands. Wow, All Might, I guess you don't recognize me then, huh? Izuku asked. What do you mean, Yagi? All Might replied, confused. First off, it's Aizawa, get it right? Izuku was cut off. Young Yagi, that is no way. Shut up. To talk to the number one hero. Shut. You should show some respect. Shut up. Respect my butt. And second, what makes you think I would even want your power? Do you remember last year talking to a boy with a dormant quirk after you saved him from a sludge villain? Do you remember leaving that boy on the rooftop of a tall building after crushing his dreams? Do you know that boy then jumped off that roof due to your words? Izuku's voice rose as he confronted All Might. His dad hugged him tightly, while his other father wiped away tears. All Might's face drained of color. I do. And no, I didn't know. Did you happen to know that boy? All Might asked, his voice shaking. No. Izuku began. Then I am that boy, All Might. The jump triggered my quirk, and now I look like this, so thanks, but I don't want your stupid power. Izuku turned his back to the screen. He then heard a cough, followed by a poof and another cough. Turning back around, he was shocked to see his dad standing there. D. Tashinori? He exclaimed. Don't call me that. I am your father, and you will do as I say, which is to take this power and become the next symbol of peace. But you're meant to be in jail. Izuku protested. Do you think the public would let them keep All Might in jail? Anyway, I'm not sorry. Killing yourself gave you a quirk, and a good one at that, so really, you should be thanking me. He was cut off as both of Izuku's dads began to shut down the projector. Izuku hadn't even realized he was crying until his father spoke. Don't cry. That's in the past, and you know that old saying, don't take a word from an old BSD, Dad said, hugging him. Yeah, don't listen to him, Papa added, also embracing him. Yeah, okay, Izuku replied, feeling comforted by their support. I woke up at 6:30 a.m. to the charming sound of my alarm clock. With my half-functioning brain, I started to wonder why I had woken up so early. Then it hit me. It was my first day of school at UA. I instantly jumped out of bed, getting caught in the sheets and hitting the ground with a loud thud in a less than comfortable position. Before I could even think of untangling myself, I saw Dad and Papa at the door. Papa was trying to hold in his laughter, while Dad gave me a look that clearly said, "How did this happen?" Once I had gotten out of the sheets, I grabbed my uniform and ran into the bathroom, slamming the door behind me, earning a shout from downstairs, "We didn't need that door anyway." I chuckled to myself as I finished getting changed and skipped down the steps to the kitchen, where I sat at the table waiting for Dad to finish making pancakes. "Excited are we?" Papa asked. "Nah, it's only been my dream since I could think." "I mean, of course I'm excited," I exclaimed. Okay, calm down and eat. We need to go in 10 minutes, Dad said, placing a plate full of pancakes drenched in maple syrup with cream on top in front of me. He didn't have to tell me twice. Within 5 minutes, the pancakes were gone, and I was putting my plate in the sink. I then went and packed my bag, making sure not to forget anything. "All right, problem child, let's go. Get in the car." "Izashi, we're going." "Move to the car," Dad called out. I quickly ran to the car and got in, buckling myself in and waiting for Dad and Papa to join me. The whole way there, I bounced in my seat, excitedly singing along with any chorus I knew that came on the radio. I was pretty sure I made Papa proud. Once we arrived, Papa and I went to the teacher's lounge because the teachers had to arrive early. Dad went to find a quiet place to rest. We entered the lounge, and I scanned the room as Aunt Namuri, full of excitement, rushed over to give me a big hug. "Ah, Izuku. I haven't seen you in what? Like 5 months. You look so handsome," she exclaimed, making me feel a bit uncomfortable. Then I turned around to see All Might in the doorway, looking down at me. "Young Yagi, glad you're here. Come with me and we can talk for a bit," he said, starting to walk toward me. I began to back up, my eyes wide and my breath quickening. "All Might, stuff. Can't you see you're scaring him?" Aunt Namuri yelled, causing Papa to rush into the room. But All Might didn't hesitate to continue approaching. As I hit the wall, tears began to pool in my eyes, and I started to hyperventilate. Everything began to go fuzzy, and the shouting around me drowned out as the world started to spin. The only thing I could focus on were the horrific memories of being beaten and tortured, replaying over and over in my mind. I couldn't even tell that I had tears running down my face. Eventually, losing all those tears caused me to get a terrible headache. I grabbed my head, screaming in pain and pleading for it to stop. Then I felt something wrap around me. In my current mindset, all I could think of was chains, so I began thrashing around and screaming louder. "Izuku," someone called. "Izuku." Who was yelling at me? "Izuku." They sounded like Papa, but I screamed, "Papa! I want Papa, but he's not here. Papa? Where are you? Please, help me. They're going to hurt me again." "Izuku, I'm here. Can you hear me? You're safe, I've got you." Papa's voice broke through. "Papa, Papa, please, don't leave me. I don't want to go back." I sobbed as I started to come back to my senses. The panic attack was over. I cried into his jacket for a while, sometimes hearing the odd sniff from him. Then I heard someone running and stopping in the doorway. I looked up and saw that it was Dad. I scanned the room again and noticed that All Might was gone, and Aunt Namuri was crying. I wriggled out of my father's grip and crawled over to Aunt Namuri to give her a hug. She immediately hugged back, and we cried into each other's shoulders. After a while, we all settled down and just relaxed in the lounge, with neither Dad, Papa, nor Aunt Namuri leaving my side. Once it was 5 minutes before the bell, we all left for our respective rooms. Thankfully, Dad and I went together. We arrived at a huge door with 1A on it. We stopped and could hear muffled yelling through the door. I looked up at Dad, who looked down at me and shrugged. We slid the door open to see all eyes turn to us, except for two. One pair belonged to a student who was busy bossing everyone around, and the other belonged to Bakugo. When he saw me, his eyes widened and he stood up quickly. "Deku," he shouted. "Izuku," feeling overwhelmed as he shut the door behind him, leaving his father standing there with a concerned expression. His father called out to him, asking if Bakugo was his ex-bully. Izuku confirmed this, curious about where the conversation was headed. His father then proposed a quirk apprehension test, suggesting that Izuku could show off his new abilities by competing against Bakugo. With a mix of determination and defiance, Izuku replied that he would show Bakugo who was the best, but was quickly interrupted by his father's admonition about his language. They both shared a laugh before stepping back into the classroom, where all eyes turned to them. Bakugo approached aggressively, towering over Izuku and demanding to know why he had disappeared for a year. Gathering his courage, Izuku retorted that Bakugo must have missed his punching bag. He then made his way to his desk, leaving Bakugo momentarily stunned until their teacher, Mr. Aizawa, cleared his throat to regain the class's attention. Mr. Aizawa walked over to Izuku, giving him a stern look. He informed the class that they had taken too long to settle down and that Izuku needed to change into his gym uniform for the upcoming test. He handed Izuku his altered uniform and instructed him to hurry outside. As the students rushed to change, Izuku struggled with his new uniform, being the last one ready. Once outside, Mr. Aizawa addressed the class, announcing that Izuku would go first in the physical exam. He asked Izuku about his previous best score in the ball throw, which was 20 meters. With the opportunity to use his quirk, Izuku prepared himself. He threw the ball into the air and, using his hover ability, created a powerful whirlwind. At the perfect moment, he hardened his feathers and launched the ball with all his might, channeling the wind to propel it far into the sky. As he turned to see the result, he was met with a mix of surprise and awe from his classmates. He approached his father to hear his score, which was an impressive 1,746 meters. His father praised him for the achievement. However, Bakugo was not pleased and shouted in disbelief at Izuku's score, but was quickly silenced by Mr. Aizawa's capture gear. Aizawa firmly reminded the class that they were there to train to become heroes, not to fight each other. He warned that anyone who couldn't control themselves would face expulsion, emphasizing that the student with the lowest score would be dismissed from the program. The class responded in unison, acknowledging Mr. Aizawa's authority. It was the morning of the next day, and everyone was already sitting in their respective seats, aside from a few who were gathered around a friend's desk to chat. However, they quickly scurried back to their seats as the door slid open, and their tired-looking teacher, Aizawa, walked into the room, silencing them. "All right, everyone, today I won't be teaching you," Aizawa began. "But then, sir, who will be teaching us?" Ida asked. Aizawa stared at him for a moment, his expression conveying that he was still explaining, before continuing. "Today you will have two teachers who will take you for some physical training." A collective cheer of "yes" erupted from around the class, celebrating the opportunity to show off more than they had before. Izuku, however, wore a brave smile while feeling slightly nervous under Bakugo's intense gaze. "Izuku, could I see you outside, please?" Aizawa requested. Izuku complied, standing up and walking out of the room to find out what his teacher wanted. Once outside, Aizawa spoke. "Izuku, I just wanted to talk to you about the teachers taking your class today." From what Aizawa had already said, Izuku could tell that All Might would be one of them, and he dreaded the idea. One of the teachers is All Might. There it is, Izuku thought. Who's the other? Endeavor. Izuku felt a mix of emotions. Endeavor was Class 1A's new assistant physical training teacher, and while he wasn't portrayed negatively in this context, Izuku still felt apprehensive. He remembered Shoto's scar from an accident during a play battle with his brother, Tuya, when they couldn't control their quirks properly. Izuku remained silent, though he felt a bit more reassured by Aizawa's words. I explained the situation to him, and he promised me that he would take care of you. But I have the day off, and if you want me to watch from a distance, I can. Izuku sighed and shook his head, signaling that he would be okay. It's alright, Dad. You can rest, and I'll just hang around Endeavor, okay? He said, putting on a weak smile. Okay then, let's go back inside. They walked back into the classroom, and Izuku sat down at his desk, this time without his usual confident smirk, as he was too busy thinking about All Might and what he might do. Aizawa interrupted his thoughts. Now for this exercise, you will need your newly made hero costumes. If you look at the number at your desk, that is the number of the suitcase your costume is in. Once I say, you are to get it and go change into it in the changing room, then meet your teachers at Training Ground Gamma, okay? Everyone nodded in agreement. Alright, you can now collect it. Everyone quickly got out of their seats and rushed over to the costume cases to retrieve their outfits before filing out the door to the changing room. Izuku's costume consisted of a teal dark green skin-tight suit with black lines running down the sides. It had an open back, secured by a red harness that prevented discomfort at the base of his wings. The forearm and calf sections were laced for the feathers he had on those parts, allowing him to adjust them for comfort. He also had a red utility belt to match the harness, which he could use to carry items like weapons or snacks for energy. A piece of thin but elastic cloth covered his neck and was unzippable for when he wanted to use his fright feathers for hypnosis. His costume did not include shoes, as they would be uncomfortable for the feathers on his feet. As he walked out of the changing room, Kirishima exclaimed, "Wow, Midoriya! Your costume looks so manly and awesome. You did a great job designing it." "Thanks, Kirishima," Izuku replied, continuing down the hallway. Just as he exited, he heard All Might's enthusiastic voice. "Young Yagi, you look great. They always say the costume makes the hero, huh?" Izuku felt a mix of pride and embarrassment. All of Class 1A stood in a semicircle around the two pro heroes, whispering among themselves. "Dude, how cool. The top two heroes are going to be our teachers. Why does All Might always look so serious? Do you think the fire tickles?" Suddenly, All Might interrupted, "All right. Today we will be doing battle training. We will be doing a hero versus villain exercise, so the class will be divided into hero and villain teams that will fight each other." "But sir, how will the teams be fairly decided? I'm sure no one here wants to be a villain," Tenya protested. "And, Tenya, the card you pick from the box will determine what team you're on, okay?" Endeavor finished, having been interrupted by the humanoid robot. Everyone was then instructed to pick a card from the box one by one and find their partner. When Izuku got his card, he saw the letter A. Now, he just needed to find the other I. He walked around until he discovered that his partner was Uraraka. They stood next to each other, listening to the teacher's next instructions. Suddenly, Izuku felt something touching his wings. Out of fright and instinct, he hardened his feathers into their blade-like state. "Ah!" Uraraka screamed, pulling her hand close to her chest, blood streaming down it. The class turned around in shock, rushing to help her and trying to stop the bleeding. They looked at Izuku, expecting him to say something. When he didn't, Endeavor asked, "Aizawa, what happened?" The class's eyes widened while All Might squinted in annoyance. "What happened?" Endeavor asked, interrupting again. I was listening to your instructions, but then something suddenly touched one of my wings, and it scared me. So, on reflex, I hardened them, but apparently she was the one touching them, and so she got cut. It was an accident, I swear. I'm sorry, I replied, starting to get nervous as they came closer. All Might stood looking down at me while Endeavor knelt to check on Urankra. I guess it can't be helped. Mina, take her to Recovery Girl, she's lost a bit of blood. Then come straight back, he said, pointing at a pink-haired girl, who I assumed was Mina. Yes, sir, she replied, saluting. She then helped Unarachnid, who was feeling dizzy, off the floor and to the nurse. Well, Aizawa. Mid. Shut up, All Might. Anyway, Aizawa, I'm guessing that she was your partner, yes? Yup, I answered. Well then, you'll need to fight without her if she's not back in time since she was hurt by your feathers. Is that okay? Yes, sir, I answered once again. They then stepped back to where they were previously and continued explaining what we were going to be doing. Time passed, and I found myself against the rabid demon child. A Pomeranian? Just plain demon? I didn't think it mattered. He was all of them. Rabid Pomeranian demon. Anyways, he and Tenya, I had eaten gold bars instead of Cheerios for breakfast, were the villains while I was the hero. I was currently outside the building waiting to start, without a plan or any idea of what I was going to do. I was planning on just winging it. Do you get it? Ugh, when is this gonna? The hero may now enter the building. I was cut out of my thoughts by the most obnoxious voice in history. Even so, I ran into the building to start my mission. I was flying through the building at quite a slow pace compared to how I usually would, but it was like a maze in here, and I didn't want a broken nose. Back on task, I was flying through the building as close to the ceiling as I could manage while all my senses were heightened. Then I heard it. Deku. Over the tests, Izuku performed exceptionally well, consistently placing first, second, or third in most of them, with the exception of the grip strength test. By the end of the day, the scores were announced. Shoto Todoroki, Izuku Aizawa, Momo Yaoyorozu, Katsuki Bakugo, Tenya Ida. And at the very end, a certain mischievous boy found himself in last place. Minoru Mineta, you are now expelled. I don't expect to ever see you here again, Mr. Aizawa declared. No. I never even got to touch Yaoyorozu's soft chest or Mina's nice. Mineta's protest was abruptly cut off as he ended up on the floor with a bloody nose. Sorry, Mr. Aizawa. I just thought it better that he didn't continue with the inappropriate comments about the girls, Izuku said with a smile. But may I suggest that the person you replace him with is someone who wanted to be in the hero course and scored well on the written part of the exam, even though their quirk wasn't suited for the physical exam because it was against robots? Why yes, good idea. Now everyone, back to the classroom, and Izuku, I'll take him, Aizawa replied as they all walked off. With a loud bang, an explosion echoed through the area. That hurts, someone exclaimed. Izuku was at a loss for words as he watched Katsuki launch himself into the air with his quirk, only to faceplant into the roof before falling back to the ground. What an idiot! Izuku thought as he saw Katsuki lying on the ground, whining. He decided to fly down, landing on Katsuki's stomach. Ugh! Katsuki shouted, trying to push Izuku off him with another explosion. However, Izuku quickly conjured a minor tornado that pinned Katsuki's hand to the ground. Once he released the tornado, he jumped again onto Katsuki's stomach and sent a powerful gust of wind down on his face, causing Katsuki to pass out. Izuku carefully pinned Katsuki to the ground using some of his hardened feathers, ensuring not to hurt him. He felt a twinge of guilt, questioning if he was being too harsh. After that, he quickly left, heading straight for the top floor where he believed the bomb would be. This time, he flew up the outside of the building and entered through one of the top windows. As he began searching for the bomb, he sensed someone behind him. Before he could turn around, they had already latched onto his back, covering his wings. If this were a real villain, he would have hardened his wings, but it was just his classmate, and he couldn't hurt him too badly. Before he knew it, his classmate had somehow twisted a metal pole around the base of his wings, restricting their movement. Izuku realized he couldn't rely on flight, wind, speed, or hardened feathers. Then an idea struck him. He spun around to face Tenya and quickly undid the collar part of his costume, raising his chin to reveal the colorful patch of feathers on his neck. Tenya instantly stiffened up. "Stay," Izuku commanded. He heard Tenya groaning, trying to break free as Izuku walked toward the bomb. Just as his fingers touched it, a voice announced, "The hero team has won." So I decided to draw the picture that Izuku took while Aizawa was hypnotized in one of the previous chapters, so here it is. Hope you like it. Hey, can you please tell us what it's like to have All Might as a teacher? One reporter asked. Yeah, speak into the mic please, another chimed in. How's he doing as a teacher? What are you learning? Izuku sighed. Just what I need at 7:30 in the morning. A group of random news reporters breathing down my neck for information on the person I hate most in this world. He and Aizawa had managed to push their way through the crowd of camera-clad people. Aizawa smirked slightly. Huh, sarcasm. You make me proud, Izu. But yeah, I guess it was coming sooner or later. I mean, he is the #1 most powerful hero that there's ever been, so they're bound to be excited. Hey, Dad. Izuku asked. Yeah. Won't they just come into the school? Nope. They can't. Only people with student or teacher ID cards can get through the security system. If they don't have one, the giant gate will close, and the system will be on guard until deactivated. Oh. If someone were to try and run in, would they get squished in the gate as it closes? What? Later, after a time skip, Izuku and Aizawa were reflecting on the reporters. Bro, those reporters were relentless. I barely got out with my life. Sadly, my school bag did not, Izuku said. I know, right? It's not manly to block people's way, Aizawa replied. Right, class? Aizawa spoke, gaining the attention of the students. Today will be a task that decides your future. You have to pick a class representative. I don't care who it is or how you do it, but I'm going to sleep, so don't wake me up. The class erupted into shouts of, pick me, and I want to do it. In the end, a voting system was used, resulting in Izuku as the representative and Momo as the vice representative. However, Izuku wasn't sure he even wanted the position. Before he could voice his concerns, the lunch bell rang, and everyone rushed out of class. Izuku was about to walk out to lunch behind everyone else when his father called him back into the room. Hey, Izuku, I need to talk to you, please. Yep, what do you need? Izuku asked. Well, you know how that student was expelled on day 1? His father began. Yeah. And how we've been in need of a replacement? Yeah. Well, he, being the replacement, is on his way to talk for a bit. From what I'm hearing, he's a quiet one. So since you're the class representative, I would appreciate it if you could help him settle in. He'll be transferring in about a month or so. Oh, and also, you were right. There are so many people with useful quirks placed in the general education department because they don't have physical prowess. I'm going to talk to Nizu about it, but could you do this for me right now, please? Sure, but I'm planning on giving my spot to Ida because he seems way more responsible than me. Also, I don't really want to be class rep, so yeah. I can still be his friend, though. Yeah, okay. Knock knock. That's probably him now. Come in. A boy with bright purple hair and tired-looking eyes walked into the room. He scanned the place before looking at Izuku and his father. He opened his mouth to say something, but a loud siren interrupted them. Warning! A level 3 security breach. All students please evacuate the building. Izuku exchanged a worried glance with his father, who furrowed his brows. They ran out of the classroom and over to the window. They saw the reporters from that morning roaming around the school grounds, and the big gate was not functioning as it should be. You boys stay here. Izuku, do your job. I'll be back soon, his father said as he ran off, presumably to round up the press and calm down the students. Izuku turned to the boy, who turned to him. So, you got a name? He held out his hand. Hitoshi Shinso. And you? Heh, I'm Izuku, and I'm looking forward to having you in our class. What's your quirk? You can probably guess what mine is, Izuku said quickly. Oh, my quirk is brainwashing. But don't worry. Wow, that's so cool. I can't believe you were put in the general education class. But at least you're here now, Izuku exclaimed. Hitoshi flinched back but then stared at the ground in shock. Well, it seems like most things have calmed down now. Want to go to lunch? Izuku asked. Nah, I'll catch up in a bit, though, Hitoshi quietly replied. Okay, you can come sit with me when you do. Later, after another time skip, Momo addressed the class. Okay, class rep, you're up. Izuku stood before them. So, we need to work out who the class officers are, but first I've decided to give my position of class rep to Ida. I heard about what he did at lunch, and I think he would be a better leader than me, so yeah. Congrats. Izuku had heard about Ida's actions, and it was the perfect excuse to pass the role to someone else. Now that that's out of the way, I need to tell you about tomorrow's hero training. Tomorrow, you'll have 3 instructors, me, All Might, and a facility hero. The training you'll be doing is rescue training for situations like shipwrecks and similar scenarios. You can choose what to wear, whether it be your hero costume or sports uniform. I don't care. The place we're going is called the USJ. Alright class, listen up. Today's training is going to be a bit different, Aizawa announced, capturing the students' attention. As you know, we're going to the USJ. The Universal Studios Japan? Denki interrupted. No, Denki. The unforeseen simulation joint. It's a place that will help train you for situations like natural disasters. You will have 3 instructors today. All Might, a facility member, and myself. We will be keeping tabs on you while you complete your rescue drills and such, the teacher continued. Finally, some real hero stuff. I'm so excited, one student exclaimed. I get to show off how good I am in water, another added. Guys, I wasn't finished. Aizawa tried to regain control. Mr. Aizawa hasn't finished talking. Ida shouted, trying to maintain order. Thank you, Ida. Anyway, you can wear either your hero costume or your sports uniform, it's up to you. Now go get changed and we'll all go down to the bus together. At the bus, Ida instructed everyone to form 2 orderly lines as they boarded. Unbeknownst to him, most students were ready to throw him into the sun. Upon entering, they discovered it was not the usual type of bus, making Ida look foolish. During the bus ride, one student joked, "Hey guys, how much of your foot can you fit in your mouth? Last night when I checked, I could only fit like half, and then it got stuck. Guess my pull-out game is pretty weak." Another chimed in, "One time I beat up an orphan for the $5 he was holding. Sure, it was his birthday present from his deceased parents, but my family's gotta eat." The bus was filled with lively chatter from the Hero Course students, all excited to show off their quirks in real hero scenarios. Then Azui turned to Izuku and asked, "Hey Izuku, I was just wondering, why do you have the same last name as Mr. Aizawa? Are you his kid?" The bus fell silent, all eyes on him, waiting for an answer to the question they were too scared to ask. Izuku felt the weight of their gazes. It took a moment for him to gather his thoughts. He glanced at Aizawa, who nodded slightly. I am his adopted son, he replied quietly. Azui seemed ready to speak again, and Izuku thought, please don't say what I think you're going to. Oh, that's cool. But what happened to your real parents? She asked. Minute. Some of his classmates exchanged looks of pity and shock at her boldness. Izuku sat there, unsure of how to respond. Well, you see. All right, students, make your way off the bus over to the entrance. There we will be given a rundown of what we're going to do today, Aizawa interrupted, saving Izuku from further questioning. The students made their way to the entrance, where they found their instructor just inside the doors. However, they were more focused on the building itself than the astronaut-looking hero. There were 6 zones in total. The storm zone, the burning zone, the flood zone, the rubble zone, the devastation zone, and the mountain zone, all of which looked amazing. After the last stragglers made it inside, their temporary instructor, 13, the black hole hero, began to explain the day's activities. Most were listening, but Uraraka was fangirling over the hero in front of her. Hey look, what's that? Down there, that portal. Is it part of the training? Kirishima suddenly yelled out. No. They are villains. 13 warned as villains of all shapes and sizes began to pour out of the portal. 13 tried to usher the hero students outside while Aizawa jumped down to hold off the villains. However, before they could get too far, they were all sent through separate portals and split into groups of around 3 throughout the different zones of the USJ. Izuku groaned as he regained his senses on the ground of the rubble zone. Oh no, he thought, realizing he needed to find Aizawa. He couldn't take on all those villains by himself, and Izuku had no idea what he would do if Aizawa got hurt. He quickly stood up and looked around, meeting Todoroki's gaze. Todoroki turned to face the oncoming villains, who looked like ordinary thugs. This shouldn't be too hard. Before Izuku could act, Todoroki froze everything, including the villains, and then turned to him. Go find your dad. I can handle this alone, he said emotionlessly. Izuku hesitated for a moment, then sent Todoroki a grateful and determined smile before flying off. It wasn't hard to find Aizawa. He was fighting right in the middle of the chaos. Izuku arrived just in time to see Aizawa struggling against a group of villains. Izuku, what are you doing here? You need to escape. Aizawa yelled. Dad, you can't take them all on your own. Izuku started, but before he could finish, a giant purple bird-like creature with an exposed brain emerged from the portal. Izuku noticed Azui, Shinso, and Ida hiding behind a rock, along with a scrawny-looking guy covered in hands. The strange man began to speak. I was going to save Nomo for when All Might got here, but since these incompetent fools are having such a hard time getting rid of some hero trainees, I guess a couple of extra kills won't hurt. Nomu's go. He pointed toward Izuku and Aizawa, and the creature lunged at them. In an instant, it grabbed Aizawa and slammed his head into the ground. Izuku stood frozen, watching as blood pooled around Aizawa's head. He couldn't move. The creature continued to smash Aizawa's head into the ground over and over until Bakugo's voice broke through the haze. You weak little moron. Get your butt into gear and stop just standing there like you just saw your dad get murdered unless that's the outcome you want. Bakugo's words snapped Izuku out of his trance and propelled him into action. He realized that if he wanted to be a hero, he couldn't just stand by and watch as the people he cared about were harmed. I have to do something. So far from what I have observed, it has 2 quirks, regeneration and shock absorption, maybe more. Bakugo's explosions don't seem to be doing much because it just regenerates right after. To beat it, I need to fatally wound it faster than it can regenerate. Okay, I have a plan. Whether or not it works, well, we'll find out. Bakugo, I'm going to do something, but I need you to send me some really big explosions. I yelled. Don't tell me what to do, he shouted back, but he began to do exactly as I asked. Now it was my turn. Using my quirk, I created a tornado around the Nomu. The wind speed was so fast that anyone who entered without the right abilities would be in serious danger. The tornado caught some of Bakugo's explosions, and the fire mixed with the wind, consuming the air inside. After a moment, I flew straight in. It took me a good 10 seconds to regain my balance, and during that time, the Nomu had spotted me. It was trying to reach me, but I was both too high and too fast. If I was going to do this, I only had one shot to get it right. The closer you get to the bottom of a tornado, the faster it goes, and that was exactly what I needed. I began to gain more and more speed, feeling as if I might pass out. Then I quickly dived down toward the Nomu and sharpened my wings into a blade-like form. I started shredding away at the Nomu faster than it could regenerate. My vision began to fade, so in a last-ditch attempt to defeat the creature, I pulled out 2 of my sharpened feathers and used them like knives to stab the creature in its exposed brain. I fell to the ground along with the Nomu, and the last thing I heard as consciousness left my body was a voice exclaiming in disbelief, "How? But that was made to withstand All Might. How did that little... I am here."